Afreilchen Chanukah, this is Gemara Baba Kama Daf Lamid Taz, and today's shir has been dedicated by a good old friend of the Daf, Baruch Hashem. We've been learning the Daf together for a very long time now, as a schus for his mother, whose yahrzeit I believe is tomorrow. The learning should be an incredible schus aliyas neshama for Penina Bas Rav Dov Ber B'siyata D'Shemaya. The learning of the entire Chabura Talmud Torah on Chanukah should bring Penina Bas Rav Dov Ber to a higher place in Gan Eden Shalmeila, closer to the Kisei HaKavod. I apologize for the lateness of today's shir. Hopefully for most, it will be up by the time you need it. And we're picking up on Lamid Tes Amid Aleph at the Mishnah. Shar shel pikach shenagag shar shel cheresh shaita vekatan. This really is a first cousin of the discussion that we had yesterday. Yesterday we discussed the shar of hektish, we discussed the shar of a kenaini, we discussed the shar of a kuti, and now we continue that with the shar of a cheresh shaita vekatan. So if a shar of a pikach, a regular healthy person, gores the shar of a cheresh shaita vekatan, deaf mute, an imbecile, a minor, the halacha is chayiv. But in the flip side, potter. Okay, so far so simple. If one gore is a cheresh vekatan, you're chayiv, but if they gore us, they are potter. Continues the Mishnah, and this is really where right away one realizes it's not so simple. Shar shal cheresh shaita vekatan shenargach, which again, let's remind ourselves, we just said, if this shar shal cheresh shaita vekatan is nagach, what's the halacha? They are potter. Now the Mishnah says, Bezdin ma'amidin lem apotropos. A Bezdin appoints for them an apotropos. Bezdin appoints for them. We know an apotropos is someone from the Bezdin that takes care of the estate of a child, etc. And that's what the Mishnah says, Umeidin lehen b'fnei Bezdin. And they have to give eidos in front of Bezdin. Now, what exactly is there in apotropos? If we just said they're a potter, well, we'll have to see. Continues the Mishnah. The cherish gets better, the shaita becomes lucid, and the cotton grows up. They revert back to their tamus state. Rabbi Yossi Omer says, Rabbi Yossi, no, they were a muad and they continue being a muad. And the Mishnah continues with almost an unrelated halacha. Shar ho'itz tadin. A shar of an itztadin. What's a shar of an itztadin? It's a shar of the arena. Rashi over here at the end of the Mishnah explains it's a shar that is miyuchad l'negichais u'melamdin oiselekach. They teach it for that. A shar that is utilized in the arena to play with, etc. Says the Mishnah, Einoi chayev misa. Such a shar gores. Chayev misa. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, ki yoigoich v'lo sheyigachuhu, because the pasuk says that it has to be gore, and not that it's taught to gore. So that is the Mishnah, and right away begins the Gemara with the obvious kasha. Says the Gemara, the first two dinim in the Mishnah contradict each other. Ha kufa kasha. The first two dinim are a contradiction. Amrit, we began shar shal cheresh shaita vekatan shenachas shar shal pikeach. Potter. We began by saying that if this ox of a cheresh vekatan gores a regular person's ox, what's halacha? They are potter. Alma, what do we see? Ein mamidin apotropos latam ligvos migufoi. We see we don't appoint an apotropos. We don't give a court-appointed person to take care of the estate of these people who don't have das in order to be able to collect from the body of the animal in case of damages. Yet, Ema Seifa, Shar Shacher Shatvekatan, as din Mamidin Lem Apotropos, the Mamidin Lem if they Apotropos. Alma, what do we see? Mamidin Lem Apotropos, Tam Ligvois Megufai. Now, the fact that the Gemara asks the question, Mamidin apotropos letam ligvais migufai, at the moment to us seems just a bit of a fancier way to say that apotropos gets involved. You have to see exactly what this means. Baruch atah Adonai, Elinu melech haolam, shakol niyeh. Amar Rava. So Rava comes along. 7 lines into the Gemara. First line is Hachi. Rava explains. Amar Rava Hachi Katani. This is what the Mishnah means. In the second part, when it says we appoint an Abba Shabbos. Ve'em hochseku nagchanim. If this acts of the Cheir Sheitav Katan, in which we just said a moment ago, is Potter, but if it continuously damages, then Bezdin does indeed appoint Ma'amid Lahem Shabbos, Umeidin Lahem V'fnei Shabbos, Umeidin Lahem V'fnei Shabbos. In such a scenario, if the animal continuously gores, then we do appoint Abba Shabbos, and then the Bezdin would accept eidos as to what happened with the shar while it was in the possession of the apachapis. Mashvina on the whole muad, and then we would consider them wood. Again, umambidam if the apachapis means because the apachapis is obligated to watch this animal. So if the animal continuously gores, the Bezdin will accept eidos. Bezdin will accept testimony that indeed this animal gored multiple times, umashvina lumuad, and created into a muad. Therefore, what? The chihadar v'nagach, when it continues the damage, l'shamid ma'aliyah me'aliyasa. Then, l'shalem me'aliyah. Then it will have to pay me'aliyah. Will have to pay full damages from the property of the Yisayim. So answers the Gemara. The Mishnah is not a contradiction at all. It's true. If the shar of a Cheir Sheitav Katan gores, it is Potter. What does the Mishnah mean? We appoint an Abba Shabbos. It means if the animal continuously gores, then we can't have this animal running around wreaking havoc in society. So then Bezdin appoints an Abba Shabbos to be in control of this animal. And now the Gemara continues, and the Gemara says that we're going to accept eidos. What's the eidos that we're going to accept is to create this animal into a muad. And the Gemara ended ligvois me'aliyah, that it collects full damages, and we know la'aliyah is in contradiction to me'gufay. Me'gufay is in the rules of Tam. We remind ourselves that if an animal gores, you collect from the carcass, from the animal itself. Me'aliyah is what? You collect not from the animal itself, but rather you collect from the estate, from the person, you collect full damages. So now asks the Gemara, you just told me that there's an apachopis that's in control, and then you said we create this animal into muad to collect from an aliyah. Says the Gemara, ma'aliyah sa man. Whose aliyah, whose choice property are we collecting from? And the Gemara says, we have a machlokes. Rabbi Yochanan Amar me'aliyas yisoimim. Rabbi Yisrael Chanina Amar no me'aliyas apachapis. Says Rabbi Yochanan, who is the owner over here? The yisoimim. And therefore, says Rabbi Yochanan, the yisoimim are going to be the ones that they have to pay in the event that there is damages. Says Rabbi Yisrael Chanina, no. Just like the apachapis is in control to watch the animal, he's the one that has to pay as well if he doesn't watch the animal. Asks the Gemara, Umi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Hachi. Does Rabbi Yochanan really say this? Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rabbi Asi. Einis kakilinach yisaimim. Says Rav Yehuda, the name of Rav Asi, that we do not, where the Bezdin does not get involved in the properties of the Yisaimim, meaning to collect payments in a scenario that they're obligated. Elinkeim ribis eichelas bahem, unless ribis is consuming it, meaning only for the benefit of the Yisaimim. Rav Yochanan Amar, he argues, and he says, oy lishtar sheish by ribis, or in a case there's a shtar of ribis, that the interest payments are going to consume the estate, oilik subis isha, or to pay one's wife. Those are the two times that we go into get involved in the estate of the Yisayim. Misham Mizaini, because the woman needs to live. But in all other cases, Bezdin does not get involved in the property of the Yisayimim. So ask the Gemara, I don't understand. How can you tell me that Rav Yochanan holds you collect from Aliyas Yisayimim? Rav Yochanan holds you never collect from the estate, aside for two specific cases of Ksubas Isha or Mizayni. So answers the Gemara, the classical Teretz, Epech, switch around the names. Rav Yochanan Amar, you're right. Ma'aliyas Apetrubsin, which fits very good with the price that we just quoted there. Rabbi Yochanan is of the opinion that you only collect from the estate for Ksubas Isha or Mizayni. Rabbi Yisrael Chanina Amar, Me'aliyas Yisayimim, then no, we do indeed collect from the Yisayimim. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan is of the opinion that we collect for the Apetrubis. Rabbi Yisrael Chanina is of the opinion that we do indeed collect from the Yisayimim. Amar Rava, comes along Rava, and Rava says, I don't understand. What did you just help? Who is, and now if we just look 4 lines up, we'll remind yourself that Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Asi, says the Gemara, let's let the Gemara speak it out, apologies. Amar Rav Yochanan, Amar Rava, Mishum de Kasha, the Rav Yochanan, Mashalei, the Rav Yisrael Chanina Toya. You're making Rav Yisrael Chanina into a mistake. Where? Rav Yisrael Chanina, Dayanahu. Rav Yisrael Chanina is a Dayan, V'noches L'omka Dedina, and he goes down to the depths of the din. So how can it be that Rav Yochanan, Rav Yisrael Chanina, is the one that's now saying that you do indeed collect from the Nechse Yisayimim? It seems that no one held that. It seemed it was either only ribis or only shtar ribis or ksubas isha. So why would Rav Yisrael Chanina all of a sudden allow you to collect from Yisayimim? And it seems that part of the problem, the Gemara is, Rav Yisrael Chanina, from his status of Dayan, has more of the appropriate outlook. He goes into the depth of the din, says the Gemara. So how can it be that he's going to say you do indeed collect from Yisayimim? So says the Gemara, you're right. Ela'ilam. Says the Gemara, you're right. Don't switch around the name. Ela'ilam lo tepach. Meaning, Rabbi Yochanan is the opinion that you collect from Yisayimim. Umazik shiny. Our case is a case of Hezek. Hezek has different rules. Because over here the shar is damaging, so Rabbi Yochanan, even though he normally does not allow collections from the state of the Yisayimim, in this case he would. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Ma'aliyas Yisayimim on the last line. Why? Diamrim Ma'aliyas Apetrubis. Because says Rabbi Yochanan, if you're going to tell me it goes from the Aliyas Apetrubis like normal, that we do not get involved in the estate of Yisayimim, says Rav Yochanan, that would be a catastrophe. Why? As we turn over to Lametesim and Beis, explains the Gemara, Mimani veloi avdi. You know what the problem is going to be? The problem is going to be is that no one is going to want to be an apetrubis. If not only are they obligated to watch the animal, but then if it goes and does damage, they have to pay. No one's going to be an apetrubis. And the problem with that is what? That apetrubis is there for the better of society. We have children, we have Yisayimim that have no one to take care of them. So if we would allow the normal rules to kick in, then we'd have a big problem. So specifically in the case of Hezek, says Rabbi Yochanan, that what? That we do collect from the Yisayimim. So that apetrubis doesn't feel not wanted to become an apetrubis. No, we do collect for the apetrubis. What about this concern that they're not going to want to be an apetrubis? Then they, the apetrubis, will go and collect from the Yisayimim when they grow up. Because says Yisrael Chanina, we have a counter issue as the top Rashi speaks out. Shaloi Shamruhu. If they're not going to have to pay, we have to be worried that they're not going to guard the animal karoi. So it says Yisrael Chanina, indeed, apetrubis has to pay. We're worried that they're going to refrain from becoming apetrubis. that's not a problem. Why? Because they'll be able to collect from the Yisaimim when the Yisaimim grow up. And that really ends part A of the daf, which is the stira between Reisha and Seifa, the stira between whether the Cheir Shaita Vekatan, those without liability, have to pay or not, the teretz that we appoint in Apachapis as the animal continues to damage, and then figuring out who has to pay. Rav Yochanan, the Yisaimim, Rav Chanina, the Apachapis, and these 2 points, whether Rav Yochanan is concerned that one won't become an Apachapis, Rav Chanina is concerned that Apachapis won't watch properly, one will want to become an Apachapis, he'll collect from the Yisaimim. Continues the Gemara, Umamidin, we're 3 lines from the top, Lametesa Mebei, says the Gemara, this din of Umamidam Avachabis Latam Nigvois Megufoi, Tanohi. This din, whether we appoint an Avachabis for the time to collect Meguf from the body of the Shar, the case of a Tam, is a Machlokes Tanoim. Titania, as you learned in a Braisa, we have an axe that the owner becomes deaf and mute. The owner loses its mind. The owner is just not here, he goes overseas. The animal remains a tam until we give eidos in front of the bailim that the animal damaged. And since the bailim are not here, we cannot give eidos in front of the bailim. The animal remains a tam. No. We appoint an apachapis if the owner is not here or doesn't have das. And we give eidos for the apachapis to make the animal into a mud. Continues the Braisa. What happens? Nispakach cherish, the cherish becomes better. Nishtafa shaita, the shaita becomes lucid. The higdil akata, and the child grows up. Obao baila b'medina sayam, or the owner comes back home. What do we do now? Yehuda ben Nekusa Amar Sumches Chazal Musai. It automatically reverts back to being a tam ad she'id b'fnei bailim. Again, until you give eidos in front of the bailim. The animal remains in its chazaka, which is that it is a mud. So Amru, so that's the Braisa. So now explains the Gemara. They said, what did Somchas mean in the first part of the Braisa when he said that the animal remains in its state of being a tam? If he means you don't come a muad at all, Hamadiktani Seifa, but then it makes no sense. Because what was the second case? Chazal Tambus, it goes back. Sounds like there is even a scenario that Somchas admits that animal becomes a muad. Elamai Areu B'Tamusai. So rather, what did Somchas mean when he said that the animal remains in its tamos? Hareu B'Tmi Musai. Deloi Mechasrinan Lei. It means we don't reduce from it. Meaning that the first time this animal gores, we do not collect megufai. We do not collect from the body of the animal. Usually that is how you collect from the case of a tam. But in this scenario, because the owner is not here, we do not collect from the animal itself because the owner is not here. Alma, and this is the line that we're looking for again. We're in the middle of trying to figure out that there's a machlokes tanoim whether we're made in abatrapas ligvois tame gufai. So Alma, according to Somches, ein ma'amidin abatrapas letam ligvois megufai. So clearly Somches holds that it could become a muad, but you're not going to collect from the goof, from the body of the animal. The Chachamim, they argue, and what do they say? That we appoint an apotropos and we give eidos in front of apotropos to make the animal into a mud. And furthermore, what do the Chachamim must hold? Alma, what do we see? Mami did not chapis latam ligvais me gufay. So says the Gemara, we could see from this Braisa, this machlokes somches and the Chachamim, they indeed argue about the very din that we brought up, whether we are maimid and apotropis ligvais me gufay or not. Says the Gemara. And once we quoted the Seifa, says the Gemara, what is the machlokes in the Seifa? Explains the Gemara, Rishos Mishane Ika Beinayu. The machlokes in the Seifa is, what do we do when the animal changes possession, changes Rishos? Somchesava Rishos Mishane. The animal changes Rishos, therefore it changes its status. And of course we can understand this. We're dealing with an animal that's a tam that became a muad. It's become normal to damage, but now it has a new rishos, it has a new ownership. So maybe the new ownership by its very nature changes the way that we view the animal. That's the machlokes in the Seifa of the Mishnah. And the truth is, sometimes we have a machlokes Tanaim and the Gemara deflects it. Over there, the Gemara leaves it. And the Gemara concludes that indeed this point can be viewed as a machlokes between the Tanakama and Rav Yesi. Tanu Rabbanan continues the Gemara with a new brisa. Shar cheirei shoyte v'katan shenagach. Says the brisa, we're about 25 lines from the bottom of Lametasam at base. First line is cheirish. So Shar cheirei shoyte v'katan shenagach Rav Yaakov mishalem chatzi nezik. Rav Yaakov pays chatzi nezik. Says the Gemara in almost comical kasha. Rav Yaakov, why is Rav Yaakov paying? What's going on over here? Says the Gemara, the obvious teretz. Eleima, Rav Yaakov oimer mishalim chatzi nezik. Okay, we got that out of the way. Rav Yaakov holds that you pay chatzi nezik. So says the Gemara, what is this din of Rav Yaakov? Am I asking on? Ibitam, if we're dealing with a tam, then shita, of course you pay chatzi nezik. The kuli amanami chatzi nezik u'du mishalim. Everyone holds that you pay chatzi nezik, not just the cheirish shoyte v'katan, and not everyone. All people for a time pays chatzi nezik, not just the cheirish shoyte v'katan. Everyone would pay chatzi nezik. So says the Gemara, v'ibim muad, and if we're discussing the animal which is a muad of a cheirish shoyte v'katan, id avdilei shmira klal. So what's going on over there? Id avdilei shmira. If the cheirish shoyte v'katan lemaisa guard of the animal, so you should not have to pay it all. He should have to pay full damages. Says the Gemara, I don't understand what's going on over here. If it's a muad and you watch your muad, then that's all you have to do. If it goes to damages afterwards, it's out of your power, and therefore you don't have to pay anything. And if you didn't watch it, then what's the din? Then you have to pay nezik shalem. So my Rava, says Rava, lo'ilam b'muad. Says Rava, really we're dealing with a muad. And what's the case? He did a mid-level shmira. Davdi shmira b'chusav lavdi shmira mu'ula. And you didn't do a full watching. Rav Yaakov savar la ki Rav Yehuda. Rav Yaakov holds Rav Yehuda that holds the Amar that the part of the tamos remains there, meaning when an animal changes and upgrades or downgrades from a tam to a muad, the original tam status remains where it is. Has the original chatzi nezek is there, and then just as an additional chatzi nezek. So says Rav Yehuda that even in the case of muad, there's also a case of tam. There's also that original chatzi nezek. This like Rav Yehuda, then he was like a second Rav Yehuda that what? Damar muga sagila b'shmir mechusa, shmir b'chusa. That a muad suffices with a lower level watching, and therefore that's exactly what he did. He did the lower level watching, and therefore you don't have to pay like a muad. So why do you have to pay chatzi nezek? You have to pay chatzi nezek as always. A muad is a tam plus. And therefore, you're parted from the muad payment, but you still chayiv for the tam payment. The Savar like Rabbanan, and he holds like the Rabbanan as well. The Amri, Ma'amidin Apachapis Latam, Ligvois Mikufay, and that's how it's going to come out. That in this case, we're going to have that this animal was guarded a Shmir Pechusa, and that's why you're paying Chatzi Nezek. Says the Gemara, Amr le Abaye, and with this we conclude. Asks Abaya, V'loi Pligi. Says Abaya, V'loi Pligi, excuse me. Do Rav Yaakov and Rav Yehuda not argue elsewhere? You're telling me Rav Yaakov holds like Rav Yehuda. V'atanya, we learned in a Braisa, Shar Shal Cheir Shaita V'kadosh Nagach Rav Yehuda Mechayev. Rav Yaakov Merchatzi Nezek Udu Meshalim. So we see clearly Rav Yaakov and Yehuda argue. So Amar Rabba Bar Ula Ma'isha B'chayev Rav Yehuda Pirush Rav Yaakov. Rav Yaakov is just explaining it, meaning Rav Yehuda said Mechayev. Rav Yaakov said, you know what that Mechayev is? Chatzi Nezek. Says the Gemara, L'Abaya Damar Pligi. According to Abaya, there Rav Yaakov and Yehuda argue B'mai Pligi. What is the machlokes? Amar L'chach Ma'eskina B'muad. V'loi natri klal. We're dealing with a case of a mood, he didn't watch it all. So Rav Yaakov said, like Rav Yehuda b'chada. U'palik b'chada. Savar like Rav Yehuda b'chada. Deal Rav Yehuda savar tam savar zukomay medes. U'palik b'chada. Deal Rav Yehuda savar mamidan abachapes latam ligvois mikufay. Yaakov savar ein mamidim. V'loi mishalim elapal gadim. We're not maimin and abachapes, and you're just gonna have to pay the palgam of the Muad. That is how Abaya is going to explain the Machlokes. We'll stop over here. I'll pick it up from Rav Acha Bar Yaakov explaining Abaya's din in the next year, B'siyata Dishmaya.